Self-help has exploded in popularity, and at its best, it gives people hope, language, and direction. But John, you often point out a shadow side that almost no one acknowledges, right? When people dive into self-help without guidance, without context, and without a grounded advisor to help kind of interpret what they're learning, the insights can get twisted very quickly. So you always challenge us to build a strong inner circle because ideas need sharpening. And without it, people filter concepts through their wounds instead of their wisdom. So what starts as a search for clarity can quickly turn into justification, blame, and emotional chaos. So in this episode, we're going to look directly at that shadow, not to criticize self help, but to expose what happens when powerful concepts are taken in through an untrained lens and end up making people worse instead of better. All right, so this will be a fun one. We talk about this, quite frequently. So I just want to let you riff on this, right? So I guess what do you think about, self-help books and why many people are participating in them? Like, what's your take on all the self-help, the industry? It's huge.
I think there's a lot of good in it. Um, I mean, for someone to look at it and say, "Hey, I wish I knew more,"
Mhm.
and want to put the time in for that, I think that's great.
Yeah.
I also like that it's like they're self-identifying that, where
Mhm.
we're not being pushed into it. So I have to say, I really like the humility of that, and then the courage to act upon it. I love that people want to understand themselves, and they have the ambition to go out there and look for the insights,
Yeah.
and it takes courage, some self-awareness. So that ambition and humility, I love that. The challenge that I see is that if they do that alone, a lot of the ways that they look at things, they'll interpret it, and it'll give them a language, a vocabulary, insights on how these things are discussed professionally,
Mhm.
but it doesn't really teach them how to use that tool so well. And so I believe that people end up doing with the clarifications that they gain or insights that they gain, they end up misusing them and cause even more destructive situations than what they face.
That's interesting. Can you break that down a little bit deeper for me?
When we read something, it's not like we understand it the way that the person intended.
Hmm.
We receive that information and we process it according to our experiences, our worldview, things
Sure.
like that, our biases. In looking at it through that lens, we apply it immediately in our own minds to situations. And
Mhm.
so some of those things situations that we have that are open, like under addressed,
Mhm.
we'll find a way for that to validate our position. So we
Mhm.
might not take a look at the whole piece, but it will zero in on a sentence that really supports our claim. We'll look at that to be the main point. We take
Mhm.
it out of context, and next thing you know, someone is armed with a better vocabulary
Mhm.
of the topic, more precise understanding of that element, but not looking at it in the relation to the rest of the items around it.
Give me an example of this. Like, can you kind of explain this and just, I guess, share an example of what you're talking about?
I know somebody that was really dialed into his faith, and it was a really important part of his life.
Hmm.
And then one day he just kind of announced that he was giving up his faith. He didn't have it anymore. And so it's like, okay, what is that situation? And people are calling me, hey, what do you think about this
Hmm.
with him and stuff? And I shared the prodigal son story. And so
Hmm.
basically, the prodigal son story is that there are two brothers and a father, and the younger one asks for his inheritance,
Hmm.
and he goes leaves the family and goes out and squanders it. And then there's an older brother who stays and works with the father, and he has the bulk of the inheritance
Hmm.
and all that. And when the wanderer brother, the one that strayed, came back, the father celebrated it and was really excited about that. And the older brother got a little upset about it. And so when I shared that story, when someone was asking me about that, and I said, well, if this is what it takes for him to really find himself and get a lot of confidence
Hmm.
in his next step, like I see it like the prodigal son story. The person wasn't really satisfied with it.
Hmm.
It was more like, hey, we shouldn't let people go so far off track. But my thought was, hey, if going off track helps you really have a solid foundation in staying or getting back on track and staying there,
Hmm.
well, then sometimes the ends don't justify the means, but there's this part that says, hey, I'd rather have someone a lot more committed, all
Hmm.
in, rather than this kind of lukewarm feeling.
Hmm. How would you determine how far to let somebody go? You know what I mean? Because it's,
Well, it's what you're responsible
yeah,
for, and then what do you feel called to? But back to what happened with that piece of scripture.
yeah.
So when the person wasn't really satisfied with it, I went back to my spiritual director. I said, "Hey, this situation happened." I shared the whole thing, and we started discussing it a little bit more deeply. And he said, "Well, tell me about the older brother a
Hmm.
little bit." And so kind of going through that, and he brought up a point that was around what was the spirit or the mindset of the older brother,
Mm-hmm.
because he stayed and did the father's will. He was there, he kept
Right.
working the field and everything, and he just stayed on top of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so the real dichotomy for me was, hey, one brother did the father's will, but did it reluctantly, maybe
Mm-hmm.
begrudgingly, and the other one didn't do the father's will, but then came back to do the father's
Hmm.
will. And so this insight was really powerful. So we kept kind of like battling through it, battling through it. I was able to come to this conclusion that said, hey, if I had to pick somebody staying on track
Mm-hmm.
and not straying, but their heart wasn't really in it, or someone whose heart was
Hmm.
all in it. Once they strayed and that led them to come back, I'm gonna pick that one. But if I
Mm-hmm.
could pick one above all else, would be someone that never strayed
Yeah.
and was all in. That's not the way that we were
Hmm.
designed. We have this built-in issue that we're going to be less than perfect, and so I really loved being able to add that to the explanation.
Yeah.
But if I went the other way, it's almost like judgment. This is clear, this is what it is, but expounding upon it a bit. And if I didn't have that spiritual director to bounce it off of,
Yeah.
I would have had an incomplete understanding, and I could have misapplied it, which I did. I didn't use the
Hmm.
the other brother as part of my discussion, and once I did, the other person really understood how valuable it was, and that we don't have to be stressed
Mm-hmm.
just because it's not the way we want it. Doesn't mean we have to be stressed about it. It means that sometimes people are on that journey, and to overimpose and over criticize, we might actually
Mm-hmm.
push that person that went astray. We might push them even further away.
Hmm.
As a father, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Right? As a business owner, I don't want to push my people away too far. But sometimes they need that correction.
Sure.
Sometimes I need that correction, and so this was a much more powerful insight than just taking the
Hmm.
item as it was.
And even as you're talking about that, you're talking about community. You're talking about people coming together. You just described a situation where you see somebody basically floundering a little bit, and the question is, how do we help them? This really shows why you constantly emphasize, having that really strong inner circle. And so, to you, what does that mean?
Inner circle is a crucial part to personal development,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of people have their friends to bounce it off of, and a lot of times those friends are there because we feel good around them,
Sure.
not because they push us to improve our intellectual understanding of
Right.
something. They don't always do that. Sometimes they're bad influences, and so let's just say you have a situation that you're facing that's a challenge.
Yeah.
You're going through it and you seek counsel of people who are not strong in that area.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times those folks will share, they'll like live vicariously through you. They'll say the things that they wish they would say to someone else where they face that same
Mm-hmm.
situation, but it might not be the best advice. It's just that the things that they wish they had the courage to say they would. And you see that a lot now in relationships, and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of relationships just won't work when there's not somebody that really understands things at that psychological level
Mm-hmm.
guiding the person. So on the inner circle, I believe having a therapist is crucial for anybody that's looking to get better at being themselves. Obviously, you could do it without it, but if you had that professional voice that knows the teachings without having the bias of your experiences
Mm-hmm.
and present things, that's super helpful. And for me, having a spiritual director is crucial. The spiritual stuff has been used against me by me. So there's times where I had an incomplete understanding of a teaching. Then I go out and apply that teaching
Mm-hmm.
or that misrepresentation, and I actually go further off track, even though I believe that I'm standing on good reasoning,
Hmm.
and I'm not the only one. And that's the piece that says, hey, if you're not getting expert feedback on these notions that you're evolving into opinions all the way into an action plan,
Mm-hmm.
if you're not getting those expert insights, you might be getting stronger and stronger in the wrong direction,
Hmm.
and that's a dangerous spot to be in.